Welcome to The Founder's Mind. This is your host, Adam Muchler. I'm very excited to share the 20th episode of the show. Thank you to all the guests, listeners, and supporters that have made this show possible so far. I'm looking forward to continuing to grow the show and continue to offer more ways to engage with the Founder's Mind community. On this episode, you'll hear from Jes Christian, founder and CEO of Hypsole. Jes dove headfirst into the athletic wear world and is developing a cleat guard. If you've ever played a sport with cleats, you'll want to get your hands on these ASAP, but you'll have to wait for them to be released in the not-so-distant future. If you don't know what we're talking about, that's okay, because Jes gets into the nitty-gritty of starting a brand, building a company, and beyond. There's something for everyone in this episode. Take a listen. How are you?
I'm very good. How are you doing?
I'm good. Welcome to The Founder's Mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So excited to be here.
I feel like I know you pretty well, at least based on how you portray yourself on social media, because we interact there a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that would be an accurate representation of who I am.
Yeah.
I'm a lot of fun, I like to think.
Yeah, like you loving Beyonce is an understatement, and you like to be at the beach, and you're an athlete, and you're starting a company.
Yes, and yes. 100%.
I'm fascinated by the business that you're growing and the brand you're growing, because I don't think I've talked to many people that are building a physical product and something that is in the apparel space. And so I think it'd be really interesting just to start, tell a little bit about your company name, what you're doing, what it is, and then we'll get into it. I mean, like, how'd you get into it and all that stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my name is Jes Christian, and I'm the founder and CEO of Hypsole, a specialty sports footwear company, and our signature product is protective guards for athletic cleats. We call them cleat guards. So if you're an athlete and you wear cleats while you're performing, then the product is designed to allow you to walk off of the field very easily without damage, without running into the number of issues that come about as a result of wearing cleats off of the surface that they're meant for. So that's it in a nutshell. We're also going to be launching with apparel, and hopefully we'll expand the brand out to have a larger apparel line, as well as obviously more cleat guard styles for more different types of cleats and sports. So that's the brand in a nutshell. And then what we're doing right now is really getting into the production and the manufacturing of it. So Hypsole product has not launched yet. Hypsole itself as a brand has a whole personality online, social media, you can find it. But the product will be launching later on this year into early next year.
That's really exciting. And I literally just started coaching my high school soccer team. For the season started this week, and already kids are wearing cleats indoors, and administrators and faculty, like, you can't wear cleats indoors, it ruins the floors. And then they're walking outside on the blacktop, and I'm like, I was like, listen up, there's a product coming out called Hypsole that's going to make this better.
Absolutely. Please continue to share that message with them, because that's what we're trying to tackle.
How did you get into this? I mean, it feels very niche to me. I mean, the sports industry and sports market's huge, apparel market's huge, but there's an element of this specific product that's fairly niche. The people that care enough about their cleats, the people that, are really, playing sports at a very, maybe not high level, but feel very competitive. How did you get into cleat guards?
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with you for sure. I'm hoping that the niche sports lovers that wear their cleats and really care about the sport will pass this message along to those that are maybe less interested, or it will become a sort of a style piece for them, less so than maybe a need for them. But yes, to start out, I'm definitely targeting those athletes that care about their footwear and really care about performing at a high level in their sport. I personally am a former track and field athlete, so I ran in high school and jumped in high school, and then I ran and jumped in college at Notre Dame. So I took the sport very seriously and had so much fun while I was competing. And in track and field specifically, especially if you're a multi-eventer, so you're sprinting and you're jumping, or you're throwing whatever different events you might be in, you're probably wearing different footwear or different types of cleats and spikes for all of those different events. So I sort of saw the issue firsthand in the worst way that you could possibly see it, because I had different footwear. I was constantly running on and off the track. Track meets take a really long time. If you have to go to the bathroom, you've got to take your spikes off. If you have to go to the locker room or to the snack bar and then come back and compete, you are taking your spikes off, putting them back on. So it got super annoying for me. And it was one of those things that I put in the back of my mind, and I didn't focus on it too much because I was not in the entrepreneurial mindset back then. But I was thinking to myself, like, this is really annoying. There should be some sort of protective guard for your shoes. And oh, by the way, like, it should probably be cute. But I didn't really act on it until after school, when I started looking at what I could create.
What was that sort of thought that you were going to go into creating versus working for a company?
So that, I think, was developed. I initially graduated from school and was fully okay with the idea of working for a company. And I had the experience of working with a number of really great companies in the sports apparel space, and that was amazing. But I think I learned pretty quickly that I didn't necessarily want to have to put a cap on what I could do, and I wanted to really explore the area of creating something new versus sort of tapping into what has already been created and not necessarily being able to move as quickly as I wanted to. And have as big of an impact early on as I wanted to have. So I think that is what sort of, that mentality is what sort of got the ball rolling for me to eventually jump into trying something new. Because I think for me, for the longest time, that was very intimidating. I have, a couple of friends that have gone out and tried to start something. And I remember looking at them a few years back and being like, yeah, no, if I can avoid that, I will. And then eventually I got to the point where I was like, you know what, you're just, you're wasting time. Go out and start something.
What was it? What would you say was the tipping point?
That's tough. I had taken a number of positions where I was feeling this same feeling of I could be doing more. I was seeing problems or inefficiencies in certain positions that I had at certain organizations, and I didn't feel that I had the ability to maybe have as much of an impact on improving those situations as I could have. And I think that's so frightful for somebody like me with that mentality of there's a problem, we need to fix it, or we could be operating so much better, to not have the ability to jump right into that because it's a different portion of the organization or whatever the case may be. That I think that was what pushed me to say, all right, I don't want to have that feeling. I would rather start from scratch and take on a lot more, to have that ability to really make something great.
Yeah. And kind of one of the things, just listening to you talk about this, is what was that first step that you took?
Well, I think it was a transition. So it wasn't necessarily just like, okay, bye, corporate world, I'm going to start Hypsole. It was great. And I took the first step. I think the first move was a gradual one. So I was still, working for the organization that I was working for at the time. And even before then, I went to grad school for sports management. And towards the end of my time in that program, I had started to get the gears turning on Hypsole. And then I think, the first active step forward I took was looking at everything I could possibly pick out of my own mind that it would take to start this business, and then laying it all out. And then sort of creating a tree of various branches that would branch off from those initial steps, and saying, okay, if I'm going to need to get a patent, what does that involve? I'm going to need to, figure out how to design this thing. What does that involve? I think the key starting point was looking at Hypsole and what I was thinking it would take to start the business. And so, I'd look at the key components that I could come up with. We need a patent. We need to design this thing. We need a website. And then putting those bullet points in place, and then sort of branching out those bullet points. Okay, how do we do that? What do we need to get the patent? What do we need to who do we need to make this design great, and going from there.
What's a piece of advice that you've received as a founder that you found to be really impactful?
Ooh, I think probably one of the biggest pieces of advice I received from my father, and I think what made it so big was that it happened in a moment that really mattered to me. We were talking about a number of different struggles and challenges that I was facing in entrepreneurship and all the uncertainties. And he sort of paused and said, you never really know. That's part of the price you pay. And I just remember in that moment being like, yes, that is entrepreneurship. Like, that is the biggest challenge that you're going to face, is that you'll never really know if the product is going to be as big as you think it's going to be, or you'll never really know if that next step you're taking is the right step, or if you're pushing hard enough, or if you're letting things go and when you should be. And that is the biggest sacrifice that entrepreneurs make, that so many other people are not willing to make. They're not willing to, spend a year in the unknown, putting so much of themselves and their resources into what they're developing, to just for the potential that it will be what they think it will be. So I love that piece of advice, and I keep it with me all the time.
That's awesome. Does he have his own businesses, or this is just something that he's picked up over the years?
You would think he had his own businesses, but no, he actually is a retired corporate lawyer. But in many ways, he was very entrepreneurial. Both of my mom was an oncologist, and she's extremely intelligent and has developed a lot in terms of cancer. My dad took a lot of risks as a lawyer, and he went for big clients. And it was at a time when, being Black in law was a lot less common and a lot less supported. And so he took a lot of really, really big risks, and some of them really panned out. So, he is, I think a lot of people think that he's very straightforward and conservative, but he actually is willing to take calculated risks. And he's one of my biggest supporters, and I bounce stuff off of him almost every day. So yes, he's an entrepreneur in my eyes for sure.
I think that there's a really interesting term that's emerged recently, which is like you have entrepreneurs and then you have intrapreneurs, where it's like you still do a lot of innovation and sort of entrepreneurial things, but you're working within an organization.
Yeah.
Whatever that is, whether you're changing systems in the organization, whether you're changing practices, or you just bring that energy and that approach as an employee, or maybe in your dad's case, a partner or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the case whenever you, especially if you're in an industry where you have to go out and get your own clients, I think that you've got to be an entrepreneur at heart to be creative about how you're going to get clients. And I think about that in real estate too, how you're going to sell houses and things like that. You've really got to come up with something. And I think that takes a lot of the same traits as one would need to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah. I mean, it gets down to like, what are the competencies, skills, and behaviors, that embody being an entrepreneur? And you can have those, in other fields, obviously.
Yeah, definitely.
What's one of the challenges that you've faced or navigated so far in the journey with Hypsole?
Yeah, there are so many. I think probably one of the biggest ones for me, and this is the crazy thing about entrepreneurship. I'll put this out there because I think it all the time to myself, and I think it would be helpful if other people knew it. The challenges that you face that are the hardest for you are going to always be unique to you. So there are all these cliche challenges that we talk about in entrepreneurship. Like, you're going to have to work so hard 24/7. You're going to have to iterate. You're going to have to, get to market so quickly. And there are all these things that I heard. And I was like, as a former athlete, I was like, I am so prepared to move fast. Like, I've been doing this all my life. Yes, hard work. I get it. It's background noise. You just keep going. And so I was prepared mentally as I could be for that. But what I was not prepared for was a challenge that was super unique to me. And that was that in the physical product world, you're dealing with this super long production timeline that I didn't really necessarily know about upfront. I didn't know that it would take that long for a footwear product that wasn't a full shoe. I didn't know what to expect. And so I was expecting to move, 100 miles an hour because that's what I've been built for. But,
sure.
when you get into manufacturing, you're dealing with a manufacturer who's dealing with other, other businesses, and things take much longer. And so at the very beginning, I was like, oh, come on, we got to go. Like, there's got to be something I can do or something that I can say to move the ball forward on the manufacturing front. And, you get to a point where you really you can only move but so much. You can only do but so much. And then you just have to let the process happen. So that was difficult for me. It's still a process for me because I always want to move quickly. I want the product to be out yesterday.
Sure.
So, but again, that's unique to me. There are other people who would take that as a huge blessing and say, oh, I don't want to move fast. This is perfect for me. So I think, that's one of my biggest challenges.
Immersing yourself in this very well-established world and process of manufacturing.
Yes.
And being beholden to a whole other system in a different timeline.
Correct. Yes. Absolutely.
Something we talked about in our call prior to this conversation is that they're being manufactured in the US. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Which I think is really cool and interesting. I have a previous obsession in life of focusing on made in America fashion and things like that. How did you find who you're going to work with? How did you find partners to create this?
Yeah. That was the tough question. When I faced that question myself, I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Start on Google. That's the easiest way. The easiest way for me to put it. I actually just recently listened to another podcast where a guy was developing a physical product, and he said the same thing. And I was like, thank God I'm not a crazy person. But you really have to just search like crazy to find, the company that's going to fit with you. And my immediate thought was like, okay, I'm going to try to do this in America because there are a lot of barriers that you don't have to overcome if you can do it in America for a reasonable price. So that I started looking for American companies right off the bat, and was, going through pages and pages of Google and using specific search words and changing them up. And to that point, I think depending on what your product is, you really have to get creative with who can develop the product for you. So for me, I was thinking, okay, what is something that's similar to what I'm trying to produce in a cleat guard? It's not really been produced before the way I want to produce it. How about, the outsole of a sneaker? That's very similar. We would have to change some functionality, but it's probably the closest I'm going to get. So who can we find who develops outsoles from sneakers? And I think that maybe was this, I'm probably simplifying it because I think that was probably, my fifth big thought where I was like, wait, it's outsoles of shoes, like outsole manufacturers. And, but you continue to sort of play around with who can help out and who's doing something similar until you get to a place where you find someone. And that's really what I searched. And that's how I found the company that I'm working with. They produce outsoles for shoes. And fortunately, they were nice enough to take a chance on crazy old me and my idea. And we've been working it out ever since.
Nice. There's I don't know if you stumbled across the platform Makers Row.
Yes, I have. I'm very familiar with them.
I'm sure at this point you are. Again, a while back, that was something that I would check in on a lot to look for products and things like that. But there's a need and demand. And there's also this I find this really interesting shift. There are a lot of industries that have kind of died out in the US. And I'm sure very, very well sort of the finite amount of manufacturers that can produce certain things. But there's also this resurgence of these like smaller brands, more boutique companies that are creating things here that are going to these sort of staple manufacturer centers in the US.
Yeah.
Where like one or two that have survived, are producing some really cool things.
Exactly. And that's exactly what happened to me. I researched from a number of different angles. Makers Row is also a great resource for, looking for manufacturers of certain types of products. And I use them. I use Google. I was reading magazines, doing whatever I could. And a lot of them pointed back to like one or two companies.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, I think I'm in the ballpark here and I should explore this. And if I can't get them to say yes, then I'll have to, dig down much, much deeper to find something. But luckily I didn't have to do that.
Yeah. No, you, sounds like you found your person, at least for now.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
What's something that you know now that you would have found helpful knowing in the beginning of this journey?
Oh my God. Everything. Everything I know now would have been great to know at the beginning. I think probably the biggest one again was how long the production timeline was going to be. When you're dealing with that timeline, the average timeline for the production of footwear is 18 months. And I think that's pretty well known within the industry. I didn't know it when I started, so that would have been very helpful because my mindset and how I operate was like, let's get it done in 3 months. Why can't we do that? Like injection mold, go. What's taking so long? And of course, like that is nowhere near 18 months. So it was an unrealistic goal to set, but it wasn't super crazy when you don't have anything to start with. I definitely wish I had known that before because I think it would have helped me craft the message to consumers and potential consumers and fans of the brand. And it would have taken a little bit of pressure off of me because I definitely had to recraft the message of when the product was coming out and what exactly it was going to look like and, sizes and SKUs and things like that. I think having as much knowledge about the industry that you're going into, easier said than done, but that's the goal.
Who's a founder that you admire and why?
Oh no, I can't narrow it down to just one.
Just the one that pops up.
Ariana Huffington popped up immediately because she's incredible. I don't know if you've ever heard her speak, but I heard her speak at a conference earlier this year. Yeah. And she, first of all, every single sentence out of her mouth is quotable. It's just write it down. Like I remember one of my favorite quotes from her at this last panel that I saw her speak at was life is a constant dance between making things happen and letting them happen. And there was this girl behind me and she was like, yeah. And I was like, that is it. Like, that is so good. That is something that I feel like entrepreneurs, they deal with that every single day is, do I push this or do I let it happen? What's the best thing for this to say? And me in particular, I'm the type of person where if I need to get in and really be stern about something to move the ball forward, I will. But sometimes there's that challenge of, will that aggravate somebody? And should I sit back and just let the chips fall? Or should I push it? And there are times when I've pushed it, it's made all the difference. And there are times when, I've let things hang in the balance and they've panned out all right. So that's one of her little tidbits that she gave. But literally every comment she was something I was writing down. And she's like the mom figure, very motherly figure. Everything about her is inspiring. And what she's been doing more recently, she's founder of the Huffington Post, but more recently with sleep and self-care. And, she had an incident where, she got super stressed and sort of spiraled down and hit that rock bottom and then said, no, we need to focus more on how to become, in the best health so that we can be the best entrepreneurs. That's the most important thing. She's been doing a lot of great stuff with that. So she's very inspiring.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really awesome example. And actually I haven't heard her on the show yet as an example. So I appreciate that. I always like hearing new ones.
Yeah.
And when you were talking about her work with sleep and things like that, there's so much emerging research and a lot of data now around sort of that self-care, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
And as a coach and someone who works with, startup executives and entrepreneurs and high performers in the business world, it's amazing how we're just not paying attention to that as much yet. I mean, we're talking about it. People meditate. People know that they should sleep. They should have a glass of water when they wake up in the morning. There are all these things that we know, but it's a series of little behaviors.
Yeah. I mean, at one point she said something to me and it was just like earth shattering. She was like, everybody knows the stat that like 90% of entrepreneurs fail, or, 80 or 90 or 99, whatever the stat is in your mind, but the majority of entrepreneurs fail. And she said, and we never ask ourselves like, why that is the case. We just say, I need to be a part of that 10%. She was like, well, if 90% of entrepreneurs are burning themselves out and, drinking monsters and staying up and living that lifestyle, that number is going to be 90%. But if we all change our mentality and our way of building a business, that number might be lower. And I just had never thought about that. I was always like, I just got to be a part of that 10%, I just got to make it work. So that, that's huge. It's huge.
I was just in a session with a team yesterday. And one of the things that came up around burnout is like frustration, exhaustion, and, miscommunication and breakdowns on a team. And for me, the traditional thing with organizations is people burn out, they get fired or they quit, and they go to another company, and it's the same cycle because on average, we're not working on those things. We're not working through those things. We're just hitting a cap and then just going on to the next organization and finding them all over again.
Yeah.
So it is interesting about being intentional about breaking that cycle.
Yeah.
What's something that you learned recently that blew your mind?
Oh man, what blew my mind? Okay, so this is going to be somewhat random, but it just happened to me. What has blown my mind recently is this trend towards, it's somewhat random, but it's also somewhat related to Hypsole, but this trend towards using digital bots as influencers and as, style icons. I don't know if you've seen this, but lately I've been on social media. There's like little Michaela, who is apparently this, digital superstar. She has over 1 million followers and she's not real. And there are the people behind the scenes that are, digitally generating these images and videos of bots that are now brand ambassadors and doing a lot of the things that people used to be doing. And so to me, it doesn't seem related to Hypsole, but I keep looking at this world of like digitally creating images, the perfect image, and thinking, what is the future of marketing going to look like? I had this whole thought process earlier where I was like, are people going to be using models anymore? Like, what is the future of this world going to look like if we can, generate people? So that was mind blowing to me. It's a little disturbing. I don't know where it's going to go, but I try to look out for things that blow my mind because they may be more real, and as we move forward into the future than we give them credit for being.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to sort of pay attention to new ideas or approaches to business or products or services, and just take a note.
Yep.
Is this going to be something that I hear about forever, or is it something that I'm going to hear about once and dissolves?
Yeah. Especially the things, for me, the things that I try to focus on are the ones that don't make sense to me. So I like using a bot, what is that? But she has 1.7 million followers. So something is clicking for people. This girl, you got to look up this specific bot, Michaela. She just was featured on a Bauer track, a song. So they're really pushing this bot as a personality. And that to me is crazy because it says a lot about what you can do with stuff that isn't real. And I don't want to be behind the trend. So I'm just trying to focus on what's going on out here.
That's crazy.
Yeah. It's mind blowing. You asked me.
Yeah, no, that's wild. Here I am, little Michaela, 1.4 million.
Yeah, 1.4. Sorry.
Either way, still well over 1 million.
Yeah.
This is confusing.
It is. Sure.
And slightly terrifying.
Yes, I agree.
What I like to close with is, what's the best way for listeners to follow you if you want them to follow you, to follow obviously Hypsole and what's happening there, and I'm sure at one point putting in pre-orders.
Yeah, absolutely. I always put Hypsole first. You can find it everywhere at Hypsole, basically, which is HYPSOLE. It's on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Our website is a great place to go if you're looking to buy the product or learn more about the product. You can enter your email and we'll let you know when it launches. And then I'm on basically everything as Jes Christian, Jes with one S. So that's my deal.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being on the show, Jes.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Founder's Mind. Check back next week to hear from Haley Hoffman-Smith, Director of Community for the Next Gen Summit and founder and director of the Her Big Idea Fund. To make sure you don't miss any awesome wisdom from guests and stay up to date on the most recent episodes of the show, be sure to visit thefoundersmind.com. You can also follow along on social at The Founder's Mind. Last but not least, thank you to Roy Matz for the music on this show and his dope editing skills that make the Founder's Mind possible. Until next time, take care.
In the world, going through all of this insanity and try to bring new ideas, make them a reality. Illuminate in the thoughts, make it a priority to implement what you learn. What you get is what you be. In a world full of noise, hard to find that clarity to try to lead subtly, never full of vanity, and try to change something small or try to change humanity. Power forward through the dark, Founder's Mind is what you see.